Welcome to Verba English. Learn and enjoy.
1. Introduction. The President of the United States had an important idea. His name is President Trump. This idea was about steel. Steel is a very strong material. People use steel to build many things. For example, they use steel to build tall buildings. They use steel to make cars that people drive. They use steel to build big bridges across rivers. Steel is used in many homes too. It is a basic material for modern life. Many countries around the world make steel. The United States makes a lot of steel, but the United States also buys steel from other countries. This is called importing steel. Steel comes into the United States from places like Canada, Mexico, Europe, and Asia. Buying steel from other countries is a big part of trade. President Trump's new idea was about this imported steel. He wanted to change the rules for buying steel from other countries. He said this change would help the steel companies inside the United States. He said it would make the steel industry in the United States more safe and strong. He spoke about this idea in a state called Pennsylvania. This state has many steel workers. The president said he wanted to make imported steel more expensive. This would make steel made in the United States cheaper compared to steel from other places. This would help U.S. steel companies sell more steel. He announced a big change to the price of imported steel. This change was about adding a special cost to steel that comes from other countries. This idea was a very big change. It was a big change for companies that make steel in the United States. It was also a big change for companies in the United States that use steel to make other things, like cars or machines. These companies might have to pay more for steel. It was also a big change for other countries. Countries that sell steel to the United States were very interested. They wondered how this new rule would affect their businesses. Would they sell less steel? Would they need to find new buyers? Because this idea is such a big change, many people around the world are watching. People in the United States are watching. They want to see if it helps U.S. steel companies. They want to see if it makes things more expensive. People in other countries are watching too. They want to see how it affects trade. They want to see if their governments will do something in return. This new rule for steel is the start of a new story about trade between countries. Many eyes are watching to see what happens next. This is an important moment. 2. What is a tariff? A tariff is a kind of tax. Think about buying something from a shop. You pay the price and sometimes there is a tax on top of that price. A tariff is similar, but it is a tax on things that come from another country. When a country buys something from another country, that thing is called an import. So a tariff is a tax on imports. It is an extra cost added to the price of goods that are brought into a country from abroad. When a country puts a tariff on a product, it makes that product more expensive for people or companies in the country that is importing it. For example, if a product costs $10 in another country and the importing country puts a $2 tariff on it, then the total cost to bring it into the country is $12, plus any other costs like shipping. The tariff adds to the final price. Governments use tariffs for different reasons. One main reason is to help companies and workers in their own country. By making imported goods more expensive with a tariff, the government hopes that people will buy more goods that are made locally. If the imported thing costs more, maybe the thing made at home looks like a better price. This can help local businesses sell more products and keep people employed. Another reason a government might use a tariff can be about protecting important industries. A government might think that some industries, like making steel or cars, are very important for the country's economy or safety. They might use tariffs to make sure these important local industries can compete with companies in other countries. Sometimes tariffs are also used in trade discussions or disagreements between countries. This story is about a tariff on steel. Steel is a basic material used in many industries, like making cars, buildings, and machines. Many countries make steel, and many countries buy steel from others. When a country buys steel from another country, it is importing steel. The government in our story is putting a tariff on steel imports. This means that steel coming into the country from other places will have an extra tax added to its price. This tax will make imported steel more expensive for companies and people in the country. The government's goal is to help the steel companies and workers in their own country. They want to make sure the local steel industry is strong and secure. So, to be clear, a tariff is a tax on goods bought from other countries. It makes imports more expensive. Governments use them for different reasons, like supporting local businesses or making industries secure. In this story, the tariff is on steel imports. It is a new rule that the government is starting. This tax is a key part of the story we are following. Understanding what a tariff is helps us understand why this new rule about steel is important. It is a way the government is trying to change how steel is bought and sold with other countries by adding a tax on imports. 3. The new steel rule. The president spoke about steel. He talked about steel that comes into the United States from other countries. He said there would be a new rule for this steel. This new rule is a special tax, a tariff. The president said this new tariff will be very high. It will be 50%. This is a big change for businesses and countries that trade steel. The president said he wants to help the steel companies in the United States. He believes the new 50% tariff will do this important job for them. He said it will make the U.S. steel industry stronger. It will give more security to the companies that make steel in America and to the workers who have jobs there. Steel is used in many important things, like buildings, cars, and machines. So having a strong steel industry is seen as important for the country. The president said this is important for the country's economy and its ability to make necessary things. He also said that countries that sell steel to the U.S. will not be able to find ways to avoid this new rule or pay less tax. He was very clear and firm about this. The president said the new 50% tariff rule will start very soon. It will begin next week. This means companies that bring steel into the U.S. will need to pay the higher tax very quickly, in just a few days. This announcement about the 50% tariff is a big step for trade policy. It shows the president wants to make big changes to trade rules for steel imports right now. He thinks this new rule will protect the important industry inside the country from foreign steel that might be cheaper. The idea is simple. Steel made in the U.S. will be less expensive for buyers than steel from other countries because of the high tax on imported steel. This should help U.S. steel companies sell more steel and keep their businesses strong and growing. The president's plan is to make the U.S. steel business safe and secure for the future. He spoke about this plan and the 50% tariff in a public meeting with people who work in steel factories. He told them directly that the new rule is coming soon, next week. He said this high tax is needed to protect American jobs and companies. He wants to stop what he called low-quality steel from coming into the country. He said the new rule will help the U.S. steel industry feel much more secure and stable. It is a 50% tax on steel coming from other countries. This is the new steel rule that will start very soon, just in 7 days. All companies that use or sell imported steel must get ready for this significant change next week. This new rule is a 50% tax on steel imports. It is a major change starting quickly. The president believes this 50% rule is the right step for American steel. 4. Reactions at home. People in the United States had different feelings about the new rule for steel. It was a big change, and not everyone thought the same way. Some people were happy about the new rule. These were often people who worked for steel companies in the U.S. The president said the rule would help U.S. steel companies. He said it would make the steel industry stronger and safer. So companies that make steel and the people who work there might feel good about this. They hoped it would mean more people would buy steel made in the U.S. This could help their businesses grow and keep jobs safe. They saw the rule as a way to protect their industry from steel made in other countries. But other people and companies in the U.S. were not so happy. They felt worried. These were companies that buy a lot of steel. They use steel to make many different things that people use every day. Think about cars, trucks, and trains. Think about tall buildings and bridges. Think about things in your home like fridges, ovens, and washing machines. All these things use steel. With the new rule, steel from other countries will cost more money because of the special tax. This means the companies that buy this steel will pay more. When their costs go up, they might need to make the things they sell more expensive too. So the price of cars or other products that use steel could become higher for everyone. This also makes it harder for these U.S. companies to sell their products if similar products from other countries are cheaper. They worry about losing customers. Many businesses talked about feeling unsure about the future. They did not know exactly what would happen because of this new rule. The price of steel had already gone up before this rule. Now, with the new rule, it could go up even more. This makes it hard for companies to plan for the future. They worry about how the higher costs will affect their business and their customers. It is difficult for them to know how much things will cost next week or next month. So, the new rule made some people hopeful and others worried. It created uncertainty for many businesses across the country. The reactions at home were mixed, with different parts of the economy seeing the rule in different ways. Steel makers hoped for better times, while steel buyers prepared for higher costs and uncertain days ahead. It was a time of change and different opinions inside the country. 5. Reactions far away. Countries far away from the United States also reacted to the new rule about steel. These countries trade a lot with the U.S. They sell goods to the U.S. and buy goods from the U.S. The new steel tariff was important news for them. Canada and Australia are two countries that spoke quickly. They did not like the new rule. They said it was not a good idea. Someone from Australia who deals with trade said the rule was like hurting yourself. This means they thought it would be bad for the US economy. Their reaction was strong. Many countries started to worry about a trade war. A trade war happens when countries put taxes on each other's goods. If the US puts a tax on steel from other countries, those countries might put taxes on things from the US. This makes trade difficult for everyone. It can hurt businesses and make things cost more. Countries want to avoid a trade war. China is a very big country and makes a lot of steel. It sells steel to many places. China also heard about the new US steel rule. China was not happy. China and the US have had trade talks before. Sometimes the talks were hard. This new rule makes the trade situation between them difficult again. China might decide to act. It could put its own taxes on goods from the US. This is called retaliation. If China does this, it could make the problem bigger. It could affect more businesses and more people. The world is connected by trade. This network is complicated. Changes in one country can affect many others far away. The reactions from countries like Canada, Australia, and China show this. They feel the effects of the new US rule. These countries are now watching closely. They are thinking about what the new rule means for their own businesses and workers. They are thinking about how to respond. The sudden news was a surprise to many countries. They are trying to understand what it means quickly. It is a difficult time for these countries to deal with this news. The reactions show that the US steel rule is a global story, not just a US story. It affects countries far away and adds to the uncertainty in global trade. The feelings of countries far away are a key part of this story. 6. Steel, money, and you. The new rule about steel imports is now in effect. This rule puts a special tax, called a tariff, on steel that comes into the United States from other countries. This makes the cost of importing steel higher for businesses. When companies in the US make products that use steel, they often buy steel from different places around the world. Now, because of the tariff, buying that steel costs more money. The price they pay for imported steel has increased significantly. Think about how many things around you are made, at least in part, with steel. Large things like bridges and buildings use steel. Cars, trucks, and trains use a lot of steel. Appliances in your kitchen, like refrigerators and ovens, contain steel. Even smaller items like tools or parts of furniture can use steel. Because the cost of the material, the steel, is higher for companies, they might need to increase the price of the final products they sell. This is a common result when the cost of making something goes up. So one important effect of the new steel rule is that the price you pay for many different items could go up. This is how the tariff on steel, which seems far away, can directly impact your daily life and your spending money. Businesses that rely on imported steel are feeling the effects of this change. Their expenses for buying the main material have increased. This makes it more difficult for them to manage their budgets and make a profit. They have to make difficult decisions about how to deal with these higher costs. Should they absorb the cost and make less money? Should they raise the prices of their products for customers? Should they try to change where they buy steel from? These are big questions that many companies are facing right now. The announcement of this higher tariff was quite sudden for many in the business world. They were not expecting such a change so quickly. Many were hoping that trade rules might become simpler, not more complicated or expensive. This sudden change and the higher costs create a lot of uncertainty for businesses. They are unsure about how stable the price of steel will be in the coming weeks and months. They worry about how customers will react if they have to raise their own prices. This makes it hard for companies to plan for the future, to invest in new projects, or to feel secure. The idea behind the rule is to help steel companies in the U.S. by making their steel more competitive. But the effect spreads out, creating challenges for many other types of businesses and potentially leading to higher prices for consumers like you. It shows how government decisions about trade can have wide-ranging effects on the economy and on everyday life. 7. Old issues, new move. Trade issues between the United States and other countries are not new. The U.S. has a long history of talking about trade rules with nations around the world. Sometimes these talks were easy, and sometimes they were difficult. The government has used tariffs in the past as part of these trade discussions. These trade relationships have changed over many years, with different rules and agreements being made. There have also been legal discussions about tariffs. Courts in the U.S. have looked at government trade actions. Recently, a court in New York made a decision about some tariffs. This court said that a large number of tariffs that the government put in place earlier were not legal. This ruling caused surprise and questions for businesses and other countries. It seemed like some past trade actions were being questioned by the law. However, a few days later, a higher court made a different move. This court, a federal appeals court, decided to temporarily stop the first court's decision. This meant that the government could continue collecting money from those tariffs for a time, even though a court had called them illegal. This situation was a little confusing for many people watching the trade and legal news. It showed that the legal side of trade rules is complex. It is important to understand that these specific court cases did not look at tariffs on particular industries. They did not talk about tariffs on steel, aluminum, or cars. So these court decisions did not stop the government from making new rules about steel tariffs. The legal challenge was separate from tariffs on specific goods. Now, the government has announced a new rule. This rule is to put a 50% tariff on steel coming into the United States. This is a very high tariff. It is a big action that targets only the steel industry. This move happens at a time when some countries were hoping for trade problems to get smaller. For example, the United States and China have had many trade talks over time. Recently, they seem to make some progress in discussions about trade. They talked about bringing down some of the tariffs they had put on each other. But the new steel tariff seems to go against these recent talks and hopes for better trade relations. This new rule on steel makes the current trade situation more tense. It is seen as going back to stronger disagreements. Countries that export steel to the U.S., especially big makers like China, will likely react strongly to this high tariff. This new tariff is a strong action in the ongoing story of international trade. It shows that old issues in trade are still important, and new actions can change everything quickly. This step is seen by some as restarting parts of old trade arguments with many countries, using a new, strong move on steel. It changes the picture of trade negotiations and relationships. 8. Looking ahead, the new rule about steel is a big change. What will happen next is not easy to know. Many people and businesses are watching. They feel unsure about the future. The price of steel from other countries will go up a lot. This is because of the higher tax. This higher cost might make things more expensive for people in the United States. Things that use a lot of steel, like cars, could cost more money. Businesses that buy steel from other countries are worried. They do not know how the higher costs will change their work. They need to find new ways to buy steel or pay more. This is happening very fast. The new rule will start in just 1 week. This gives companies very little time to get ready. Other countries are also thinking about what to do. Some countries are not happy about the new U.S. steel tax. They might decide to put their own taxes on things from the United States. This is called retaliation. It means one country does something, and another country does something similar back. This could make trade between countries more difficult. China is a very big country that makes a lot of steel. This news about the higher tax is not good for them. The United States and China have had many talks about trade before. They even tried to lower some taxes recently. But now, with this new steel rule, the situation is changing again. It seems like the trade discussions are becoming harder, not easier. Some people thought that these kinds of trade taxes might end soon. The market, which is how people buy and sell things, was hoping for fewer taxes. But now, with the tax on steel going up to 50%, there is more uncertainty. People do not know what will happen next in trade. The courts in the United States have also talked about trade rules. There have been questions about if some taxes were right or not. This new steel tax is different from those court cases, but it adds to the changing situation. The president is using this rule as a tool. So, the future is not clear. Businesses face challenges with higher costs and not much time to prepare. Other countries might react, making trade wars possible. The story of trade and taxes is still happening. Everyone is waiting to see what will come next because of this new rule about steel.